It started with a joke. Who set up this museum piece? Radio Shack Mason chuckled into the mic, that smug startup sparkle in his eyes, like he just discovered sarcasm and synergy in the same brainstorm. The whole team laughed. Well, most of them. The engineers fake laughed. Interns giggled like they were supposed to, and me? I just stared at the glowing rack of servers I'd babied for 9 years, like a colicky infant hopped up on voltage. I thought, this is it. This is the moment this clown hits detonate on his own future. He was the new CFO, Mason Carrick. Walked in 4 weeks ago like he owned the company, armed with a laminated LinkedIn and buzzwords that could power a wind farm acceleration liquidity, digital optimization, full Silicon Beach TED Talk energy. The board loved him because he wore smart glasses and called spreadsheets narratives. He smelled like almond milk and disruption. And now, in the middle of our all-hands, he had the laser pointer aimed squarely at my validator rack like he was about to give it a participation trophy. This little guy, Mason sneered, has been chugging along since 2013 legacy hardware. Totally redundant. We're wasting over $2,000 a month powering Denise's digital antiques. Time to yank the cord. Laughter, but quieter. Just enough for me to hear the pressure rise behind my own eyes. I didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just sipped my oversteeped tea and watched him roast the one system in this building that hadn't failed since Obama's re-election. They didn't know what I knew. That rack, it wasn't nostalgia. It was mission critical. It powered the only transaction validator still capable of reconciling token drift in real time. Their pretty new cloud setup couldn't handle the sync load if you gave it steroids and a vacation. I'd told them. I documented everything in 6 different places. But Mason read the onboarding manual like it was a BuzzFeed quiz titled, "Which Pizza Topping Matches Your Leadership Style?" And if you're still reading this 4 paragraphs deep, you're one of us. Take a second to like and subscribe. Most of you ghost these stories, and it hurts us more than Mason hurt our payment system. Support the story, or the spite, or both. Anyway, Mason ended with his favorite tagline, "Let's future-proof the past." Translation: let's unplug stuff I don't get and hope I'm gone before it explodes. Back at my desk, I watched the company Slack light up like New Year's Eve in Vegas. Big changes coming. Excited to optimize. Does anyone know if Denise's rig is really that outdated? I didn't answer. Instead, I logged into the validator node. One final time, exported a full activity mirror to my private terminal, and tagged one file with a single word pending. I'd built that rig myself. Nights, weekends, scavenging parts off auction sites and outdated inventory. The scripts were bare metal efficient. The protocols, bulletproof. It was Frankenstein if Frankenstein bench-pressed clean code. No cute APIs, no unnecessary wrappers, no bloat. It didn't care about mood boards or synergy. It ran data. It caught async bugs. It resolved token conflicts before anyone knew they existed. Silently. Flawlessly. Until now. I packed my desk into a reusable grocery tote plant's thermos. A notebook I never let anyone touch, closed my laptop, and walked past Mason's office. He was laughing again. Something about finally clearing the junk. I smiled at him, nodded like I respected him, like he hadn't just yanked the safety net from his own trapeze act. He thought he unplugged a server. What he really unplugged was their parachute. And they used a dolly to do it. 2 guys from facilities showed up around 9:04 a.m. One had an energy drink. The other was chewing a granola bar like it had personally wronged him. Neither of them had the faintest idea what they were touching. I stood in the back of the server room, arms folded, as they unplugged my rack like they were tossing out an old TV. "Got orders from Mason," the tall one muttered. "Unplug the nostalgia stack." That's what he called it. The nostalgia stack. Like it was a dusty box of floppy disks, not the only thing keeping our transaction engine from turning into digital oatmeal. One by one, the leads blinked out like tiny stars, going dark. The fan slowed. The hum died. So did my breath. I said nothing. Not when they bumped it into the doorframe like amateurs moving Craigslist furniture. Not when my stomach twisted into a knot of fury and restraint, because if I said even one word, I'd have burned someone alive with it. But I didn't, because I had a plan. While Mason was busy rehearsing buzzwords in front of his bathroom mirror, I was building a secure data capsule on a biometric-locked thumb drive. Inside validator override keys, rollback scripts, and a beautifully indexed ledger of every system-level change I'd ever made. The last line I typed, init failsafe 9x echo. It didn't execute anything yet, it just waited. Initiate failsafe protocol 9x echo. It didn't execute anything, not yet, it just waited. That morning, I drafted a quiet message to legal, nothing hostile, nothing dramatic. Just a clean record of technical concerns. The kind of email that gets archived and ignored until one day it doesn't. At exactly 9:22 a.m., I returned to my desk, grabbed my old metal coffee mug, a folder of outdated onboarding forms, and a red envelope labeled, "If found, please return to Denise H." Inside a dead USB stick from 2013 and a bent paperclip. Just enough misdirection to throw off anyone who got curious. I passed by Tanya from HR on the way out and casually told her I'd be working remotely for a few days. No explanation. No scene. She blinked like she couldn't decide if I'd just been fired or promoted. I didn't help her figure it out. Instead, I took the back stairwell, the one I used the day our platform went live for the first time. Back when there were only 6 of us, and the server rack was 2 milk crates and a discount fan I'd bought from Ace Hardware. Back when people actually cared. I used to haul that thing by hand, floor to floor during office moves. And now, they'd wheeled it out like a broken vending machine. But I wasn't panicked. Panic is for people who don't have a contingency plan. I had one. Had it for months. Because when you've survived 3 CEOs, a dozen restructurings, 2 ransomware scares, and Mason's smug buzzword evangelism, you stop reacting. You start preparing. You don't yell. You don't explain. You wait. At home, I flipped on my mirror node, my private clone of the production validator, humming in a temperature-controlled server closet I'd built after the 2020 flood taught me about real redundancy. I watched the logs scroll, confirmation cycles lagging, duplicate transaction IDs creeping in, minor flags piling up like mold in drywall. They hadn't noticed yet, but they would. And by the time they connected the dots that Mason had pulled the plug on the real validator, they'd already be hemorrhaging. Refund loops, failed checkouts, ghost carts filling up their analytics. And me? I'd be home, sipping lemon tea, waiting for the knock, not because I wanted it, because I knew they'd need it, desperately. If you want to see how this quiet power unfolds and catch the next chapter of stories like mine, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes the biggest victories come from the calmest battles. Like all infrastructure meltdowns, it began the same way, quiet. Inconvenient, and conveniently someone else's fault. 2 days later, the first help desk ticket landed. Right on schedule. It started with a refund. One customer reported getting double their money back for a single canceled order. Then another. Then 6 more. Different users. Different regions, all within a 2-hour window. The refund queue jammed up like a clogged pipe during rush hour. Still no alarms, no fire drills, just raised eyebrows and some light hand-waving. Our outsourced IT support, a group of overconfident consultants parked somewhere in Kansas with Synergy in their Slack bios, called it a regional hiccup. Maybe DNS latency, possibly a failover node lagging. Their solution, purge session cache. Restart the microservice. Classic tech support bingo. Meanwhile, the order queue started flashing errors like a rigged slot machine on payday. Sanctions stuck in processing. Payments freezing. Customers refreshing for hours, then abandoning ship and buying elsewhere. And the cloud dashboard still said, operational, which is corporate for nothing to see here. Please ignore the fire. At the next morning, stand-up Mason joined the Zoom, grinning like a man who just read Leadership for Dummies. Fresh haircut. Teeth practically glowing through the webcam. So, bit of turbulence. But all systems are go right, he chuckled. Maybe we just need to reboot the cloud. I watched from my kitchen table, earbuds in feeding crusts of sourdough toast to my dog and trying not to slam my forehead into the mug. Mason's voice sounded like a TED Talk soaked in cold brew and tech bro arrogance. He had no idea. Because here's what Mason never grasped, what none of them did. That server rack didn't just run the validator. It corrected it. It patched token drift on the fly. Real-time synchronization. Ever spin a coin and watch it balance. That's what my validator did with transactional chaos. Controlled entropy. Smoothed the stream. Without it, tokens aged out too fast. Timeouts clashed. Refunds duplicated. Back-end logic collapsed because there was no stable state to confirm. It wasn't a bug. It was math. Entropy unleashed. I leaned back and opened my private terminal. My mirror system, quiet quarantined, perfect, had been watching everything. Logging each spike, every cart abandoned, every flag marked with an echo hash. The logs didn't lie. Unlike Mason, the truth didn't bluff. The drip became a trickle. The trickle, a leak. By noon, sales metrics reported a 6% variance between what we processed and what we actually captured. Still within tolerance, Mason claimed. Because he didn't understand the one thing he should have feared, variance always compounds. Mason ended the meeting early to focus on deliverables. Translation phone a friend who once built a Shopify plugin and pray for a miracle. I didn't gloat. Not yet. There's no satisfaction in watching a plane crash you warned them about. Just the heavy inevitability of impact. I didn't want this chaos, but I saw it coming. Saw it blooming in the logs like dry rot in an old foundation. Quiet, beautiful, in a way only engineers can appreciate, and completely unstoppable. Entropy doesn't scream. It whispers. By Friday morning, the internal dashboards started lying. And I don't mean slightly off. I mean fully contradictory. In real time. The sales team saw $480,000 in revenue. Accounting saw $312,000. Marketing's dashboard, never one to be outdone, showed $530,000 and triggered a celebratory Slack parade filled with party emojis and that blessed hashtags. Then someone checked the refund totals. $90,000. And suddenly, nobody knew what we'd actually made. It was like being haunted by ghost revenue dollar amounts, flickering in and out of reality. One of the accountants, Linda Sweet, exhausted Linda running on iced coffee and sarcasm, finally snapped in the finance channel. Are we making money or bleeding it? Because QuickBooks says both. The complaints came next. Waves of them. Orders still stuck in processing. I was charged twice and got nothing. I canceled yesterday and still haven't seen a refund. One guy threatened to report the company to the Better Business Bureau and his cousin who worked at Channel 8. I bookmarked his comment. Seemed like a man who followed through. Then the spark hit the fuse. A junior developer named Marcus, straight out of UC Santa Cruz, and still optimistic enough to believe management read tech tickets, submitted a detailed incident report. Flagged urgent. I watched it pop up from my mirror node, sipping lukewarm tea. The title, Token Loop Mismatch. His words. The backup validator isn't compensating for synchronous token delay. Timestamps are drifting too fast. Orders are stacking before closures finalize, creating digital echo transactions. Poetic, accurate, brilliant. Also, his last act at the company. Because Mason, in full crisis denial mode, fired him. Said Marcus was creating needless panic and undermining team morale. No severance. No HR present. Just a Slack message. Thanks for your service, Marcus. I watched the whole thing unfold from my terminal. His access revoked, his email signature erased, another loose thread clipped. But the fabric already unraveling. Just like that, another loose thread snipped before it could unravel the patchwork quilt Mason had stitched together to hide his incompetence. That's when I sent the email. No name, no threats, Just a soft, surgically worded message routed through a secure third-party relay to our legal department. See Protocol Echo 9. Reference lines 4578 Invalidator Patch Notes V2.7b. Suggested reading immediate. It was short, precise. A paper cut to the ego. Just enough to make a smart lawyer dig. Protocol Echo 9 wasn't public. I'd buried it 3 years ago, deep in our infrastructure documentation, an internal failsafe designed for one exact scenario real-time failure of synchronous token correction due to manual system disruption. Or in plain English, what happens when someone unplugs the one thing keeping everything alive. I didn't want to burn the place down. But legal, their job is to panic the moment they smell smoke. By end of day, half the engineering team was in triage mode. Marketing paused all campaigns. Sales begged for manual override scripts. And Mason. He was conveniently off-site bouncing between frantic calls and caffeine overdoses. Probably Googling phrases like, how to fix cloud without backup and can junior dev sabotage crash e-commerce. He wouldn't find answers, because the answer was me. And I hadn't even lifted a finger. The emergency meeting invite hit my inbox at 7:58 a.m. Saturday. Subject line, Sparkles. Q2 sync touchpoint. Sparkles and Mason speak meant, oh no. Everything is on fire, and I just drew a happy face on the control panel. 12 people joined the Zoom. Only 2 turned on their cameras. The rest looked like they were either emotionally drained or mentally calculating how long severance could cover rent. Mason, meanwhile, popped on screen with under-eye concealer and that CEO in training smile. Okay, team. He began, voice all polish, no substance. There's been a little noise around the transaction pipeline, but this is just routine turbulence. Routine. Like we were dealing with a squeaky fridge not bleeding 6 figures in ghost refunds. I've spoken to our cloud partners. PR is preparing transparent messaging. We'll lead with honesty and confidence. Translation, vague lies and blind faith. Then he added the kicker. As for the validator logs engineering is reviewing, we've got backups of backups. Just a visibility hiccup. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, one of the last good engineers still at Bacon. You locked it, didn't you? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't need to. She already knew. They all knew now. Mason was bluffing like a man trying to win poker with a handful of Uno cards. The validator logs the ones showing where the transaction pipeline had ruptured, where ghost refunds were being issued without matching charges were locked. By design, tied to a secure encrypted certificate. And that certificate bound to my fingerprint. And a passphrase so convoluted, no AI could guess it if you gave it a decade and a cheat sheet. And Mason couldn't even spell asynchronous without help. The engineering team had tried everything. Rotating credentials, admin overrides, even suggesting an intern try brute forcing it, like we were characters in some bad Netflix thriller. Nothing worked, because I didn't want a workaround. I built it this way for a reason. After Jenkins wiped a month of sales logs back in 2019 and Mason's predecessor tried to pin the loss on legacy architecture, I swore never again. So I documented it, encrypted it, and stored the real keys offline, linked only to one isolated terminal no one but me could access. Back in the emergency Zoom, one of the board members finally broke the silence. So, are you saying we can't access the logs showing where the revenue is actually going? Mason hesitated. That smile flickered, still plastered on like cheap vinyl. We're just seeing a brief credentials. Mismatch, he lied. Standard protocol drift. My team's on it. But I could see the panic behind his polished lens glare. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about perception. The system was unraveling, and with it, Mason's personal rebrand as the savior CFO. His LinkedIn glow-up was crumbling pixel by pixel. PR tried to jump in with a lifeline. We're drafting language like proactive maintenance and infrastructure modernization. Thoughts. Someone unmuted, coughed the word bullshit, and promptly left the call. I took another sip of my tea, the logs scrolling quietly on my private monitor. My dog snored under the desk. The air conditioner hummed a steady, faithful background noise. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was watching rot get daylight, watching the fire they lit crawl across the foundation Mason swore was bulletproof, watching their architecture bend under pressure it was never built to carry, because they yanked out the keystone and called it streamlining. And me, I didn't leak anything. I didn't break a law. I just let gravity do the rest. I didn't shout, didn't leak anything. I just let the truth do what it always does. Eventually, it screams loud enough to drown out every lie in the room. It happened at exactly 11:42 a.m. on Saturday, smack in the middle of the much-hyped spring surge sale where everything from yoga mats to smartwatches was 40% off and promoted across 4 states, 2 wellness podcasts, and 1 very expensive light rail wrap in downtown Portland. And then nothing. No processing. No thank you for your order. No cha-ching from the revenue dashboard. Just silence. The digital equivalent of stepping on the gas and watching the engine fall out of the car. Order confirmations disappeared mid-transaction. Customers clicked buy now and got looped into digital limbo. One woman posted a screenshot of her cart stuck on a loading wheel for 23 minutes captioned, "Is this part of the sale or a psychological experiment?" Another influencer, Ty Vaughn, fitness coach with 2.1 million followers and a six-pack that should require federal approval, posted a video where he stared blankly at the checkout page and whispered, "They scammed us." It hit 500,000 views in under 3 hours. Hashtags and spring surge fail. Not sponsored. Any more refunds began triggering automatically. Not because someone approved them, but because the system couldn't verify the charge state. It defaulted to customer protection mode, $600,000 in failed refunds gone in 2 hours. Then came the cherry on top. At 12:03 p.m., every internal revenue dashboard just froze. Dead. Like a wristwatch tossed into the ocean. Slack threads turned into horror show transcripts. Saribi, can someone confirm if the transaction bridge is down? Ron Finance, there is no bridge. It's just gone. DevOps, SAM logs aren't corrupted. Just blank. Like they never existed. Mason, ever the optimist, was still hopping on team calls offering gems like just a minor sync issue. The cloud probably needs to hydrate. Hydrate. He said that, out loud. Legal started circling again, asking for Protocol Echo 9 documentation. One of the junior attorneys CC'd me by mistake. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. At 1:27 p.m., I got a text from Miguel, one of the last solid engineers still hanging on after the layoffs. No pleasantries. Just, "Did you know this was coming?" I stared at it for a long second. Then replied with 3 simple words. "They unplugged it." That was it. No gloating, no villain monologue, just the truth. Because this was never sabotage, never revenge, just physics. Cause and effect. They ripped the spine out of the organism, and now they were stunned it couldn't stand. You don't cut the brake line and then act shocked when the car hits a tree. And me, I was baking banana bread, watching the collapse unfold from my kitchen like it was Sunday football. Every failed transaction, every broken session, every misfired refund hit my mirror node like digital confetti. And it was beautiful. Not because I wanted them to fail, but because it proved what I'd always known. You don't mock what you don't understand. And you definitely don't unplug it. By Monday morning, the office air was thick with silence and fried circuit board. That tangy, metallic scent of desperation clung to every hallway. No one said it out loud, but the vibe had shifted. The startup swagger Mason had brought in like a guy showing up to a bonfire with a frisbee was gone. In its place, white-knuckled panic. Slack channels were ghost towns. The help desk backlog read like a disaster report. Refund queues had metastasized. And worst of all, no one could say how much money we'd actually lost. That's when the board called in a forensic audit, fast-tracked by legal, executed by a third-party team that billed like surgeons hourly and humorless. They didn't waste time asking questions. They just followed the data. Logs, timestamps, packet flows, access trails. 19 hours later, they dropped the verdict like a hammer. The backups, not backups at all. Just partial mirrors. Cloud-synced image nodes that depended entirely on live validator. Timestamp correction to function. They didn't store the truth. They borrowed it. Which meant the second Mason pulled the plug on the original rack, everything else went blind. Token drift began immediately. First milliseconds, then full seconds, then fatal mismatches. Orders processed against expired tokens. Refunds triggered for purchases that never cleared. Carts cloned, charges looped. By the time they realized the data wasn't just corrupted, it was radioactive. The worst part, the system had been surviving for years. Quietly, manually, line by line, by me. The forensic team found it in the logs. Daily timestamp corrections precision patches, each one pushed manually under an admin key labeled D. Hart Norris. No cron jobs, no scripts. Just a woman and her terminal. Day in, day out. Patch, validate, confirm, repeat. I never bragged about it. Never dropped it into performance reviews. Never listed it on a slide deck. Because I wasn't doing it for credit. I was doing it because no one else would, and someone had to. And Mason. He finally understood. Too late. That night, hours passed, what any sane person would call working. He was seen pacing the office barefoot. White dress shirt clinging to him like panic sweat and cold brew. Jules, one of the IT guys, saw him through the glass wall of the main conference room, just standing there, alone, clutching an old backup drive like it might whisper an answer if he squeezed it hard enough. And then he said it, quietly, to no one, maybe to God, maybe to the vending machine. Unplugged the validator. Jules didn't answer. Just stood still and watched the man unravel. Because that's what it was now. Not a system failure. A slow-motion collapse of a man who'd finally realized the thing he mocked was the only thing holding everything together. Later that week, legal unearthed my documentation. 3 years of it. Emails, internal memos, slide decks with subject lines like validator load failures under high drift conditions in case for a hybrid redundancy architecture. Stamped, time-coded, ignored. One email stood out. Sent March 3rd, 11:14 a.m. to Mason Carrick. Subject, validator dependency. Critical. Just flagging again that the cloud mirrors aren't independently validated. If the primary node is ever disabled, token desync will spiral. Confirming we're aligned before any infrastructure decommissioning. Denise H., marked as read. Never replied. No one could save him now. And I didn't have to lift a finger. The call didn't come from the CEO. It came from Rachel, their crisis PR fixer. Smooth voice, Manhattan zip code. The kind of woman who could plug a leak in a scandal and break a non-disclosure in the same breath. She left a voicemail so polished it practically curtsied. Would you be open to a confidential conversation regarding a short-term advisory opportunity? Translation: the house is on fire, and you're the only one who knows where the extinguisher is. I didn't respond. Not immediately. I finished my coffee, took my dog for a walk, watched the sun rise like it owed me interest. Let them sweat. I sent my reply. No greeting, no fluff. Just terms. A 3-month retainer paid upfront in full. Full administrative access, no oversight. I pick my hours, my tools, and who I work with, or don't. Mason Carrick was to be publicly removed by Monday. No leave of absence. No transitioning roles. I wanted his badge deactivated and Slack profile grayed out before plugging in a single damn cord. 4 hours later, the contract arrived. Signed, sealed, every line accepted. No negotiation. They even added a line, "Welcome back, Denise. Thank you." Pathetic. The next morning, I arrived at 8:01 a.m. Not because I had to, but because I knew the early crowd would notice. Same parking spot, same boots, same ID badge. Only now it carried a different weight. I scanned in, stepped into the lobby, and felt it the hush. that heavy silence after a storm. It smelled like burnt coffee, shallow breaths, and dread. No one spoke. A few engineers nodded awkwardly. Some avoided eye contact. HR peeked through glass like I was a tiger pacing the cubicles. Even Tanya, the receptionist who'd complimented me for years, blinked and looked away. I didn't blame them. I walked past Mason's old office. Empty. Blinds drawn. Chair spun backward. Half-drunk protein, shake sweating on the desk. His nameplate was gone, just a faint rectangle, like a tombstone someone tried to erase. A sticky note on his monitor read, "Plug it back." I kept walking. Straight to the server room, my server room. The one they'd turned into storage after gutting the rack. I unlocked the cage. It smelled of metal and memory. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, just unplugged. A cathedral without a choir. I knelt, plugged in the power, and felt it hum under my hand. No speech, no applause, just fans spinning. Lights blinking steady in rhythm. The validator node synced with my mirror system, like two old friends reuniting. I checked logs, tokens aligned, drift corrected, refund queue halted, sales queue balanced. It didn't take hours, it took minutes like it had been waiting. I stood, dusted my hands, and left without looking back. No banners, no applause, just restoration, precision. The quiet satisfaction of watching something broken bend back because I said so. The validator came online at 8:19 a.m., no countdown, just a soft click and blinking lights. Within 90 seconds, mirror nodes acknowledged restored authority. Within 5 minutes, token drift fixed across all layers. By 10 minutes, the sales engine breathed again. Transactions flowed like water over unclogged pipes. Refund queues thinned like smoke. The confirmation loop, dead since Saturday, lit up with surgical precision. The system didn't need fixing. It needed reminding. And now it remembered who built it. If you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated at work, know you're not alone. I stayed silent. I planned and I fought back quietly, but with purpose. Your knowledge and dedication are your power. Never let anyone diminish that. If my story resonates with you, drop a comment to share your experience or just show support. Let's remind each other that resilience and precision win even when no one's watching. And remember, when they doubt you or try to unplug your spark, don't panic. Stay steady, build your quiet strength, and trust that your work speaks louder than their noise.